Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to After Cafe, where ideas take shape, thoughts find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest, one of his advocacy to discipline and multiply to spark a great harvest, none other than Mr. TS Wright.
Hey, it's great to be here, my friend, and looking forward to a fun, fruitful discussion.
Welcome, Mr. TS. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
You bet. So, obviously, I'm TS Wright, as Daniel just alluded to, and I I am the president, CEO slash founder, and author of the God Center Concept, as well as the host of the God Center Concept podcast and Kingdom Crossroads podcast and God Center Concept TV show. And we are our God Center Concept is what everything is based around, and it's really about discipleship. And really the goal is that we're a movement. That's really what we're focused on, and the movement is about not only discipleship, but it's about training people up and then planting them in other places and other areas to help them disciple other people. So it's the whole idea of multiplication, and that is at the heart of the gospel, and that's the model that Jesus left us with, and that's the model that we follow.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. TS. And today let's talk about discipleship. Let's start with the core definition. In today's complex world, what does truly mean to disciple? It's about belief, behavior, or specific relationship.
you know it's a little bit of all of it. And so when we talk about discipleship, and we've got four books coming out. We'll have the first one out sometime in late January, early February, and that book is called, it's all the God Center Concept series, but that book is going to be called Embracing the Truth. And it's the first of the four. And then all four books each are a standard. So we have four standards that we disciple by: embracing the truth, and then cleansing the heart will be the second one, and then the third will be fixing the eyes, and then the fourth will be carrying the message. And it's going to basically be based on 40 lessons. And in those 40 lessons, we teach people how to be discipled. We disciple them through those 40 lessons. And then after the 40 lessons, they can go and disciple others. And we help people get the understanding of what discipleship is, and then be discipled themselves, and then understand how to disciple others, and then carry that message and be able to do that with other people. And here's the thing: discipleship has those four components, even if they're not layered like that specific into that kind of teaching mode, but they should always include those four standards. And then the other piece is accountability. Accountability is at the heart of the gospel. We have to have accountability. And alluding to what you talked about, relationship, that's where accountability happens. Is that, there's a lot of transactional pieces to this, but there has to be that relational piece too. And discipleship is rooted in relationship, and it's rooted in accountability. And without those two components, then it's hard for somebody to grow. We don't just grow because we read stuff. We grow when we come to understand new knowledge, and then we take that knowledge and we're held accountable to applying it. And the best way to have that happen is to be held accountable to somebody that you have a strong relationship with, that'll walk with you and encourage you, and sometimes give you a little discipline when you need it, and help you structure yourself, help to structure yourself in a way that we're walking according to the Lord. And Jesus called us to do this, and he talks about that in Matthew chapter 28, the Great Commission. And the Great Commission is, it's all about discipleship. Discipleship is the heart of the Great Commission. We are to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so that component was not a request, it's a command given by God through Jesus Christ. And he did that right before he sent it into heaven. And he empowered his disciples to continue to grow his movement. And the movement obviously grew in ways that no one could have ever imagined. He saw it. I think the disciples, after they received the Holy Spirit during the Pentecost, saw it, started to see it. But it really took them receiving the power of the Holy Spirit to them to start doing that. And then as they started spreading the word, and we got converts like Saul turned, then became Paul, and Paul took the gospel in directions that no one could have ever imagined, and then it just grew and grew and grew. But what he did is he made disciples, and so did the other apostles. They all went into different areas and were ministering and leading people to Christ and helping them grow, and they had followers, obviously disciples as well. And so that is how the movement started. It started there. We're just a continuation of that. That's really what we are. The God Center concept is all about that. And we're really trying to help people in the church to do this. We see a need for that inside the church, that real discipleship is not something that's really prevalent. And while evangelism, basically leading somebody to Christ, is something that preachers talk a lot about, we don't really get a lot in the way of discipleship. And there's not really a lot of strong discipleship plans out there. And I've been trained in it over the last 30 plus years. And so that's what we're doing here. The Lord has led me to create this, and it's growing and growing and growing. We have, uh, my wife and I have a couple of groups that we lead right here on the ground. I have a group that I lead as well, a group of men. And then we also have, we're getting ready to start what's called The Gospel Is. And it's a prelude into discipleship. And it's really about growing people and planting disciples. Just like organizations do church planning, we're doing disciple planning. And that's really what our focus is. And we believe that this is the message of the gospel. And we know that, as the Lord has really led me to do this.
Indeed, many people continue discipleship with membership in a religious community. What is the crucial difference between simply belonging and actively following?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you know what? I get that a lot. And it's phrased in different ways, but it's that exact same question. You know, somebody asked me one time, is there something about it that makes it different than what we're doing when we do our Bible studies, or, we're just belonging to a church? And I said, first of all, serving in the church is something we should do. We should have some kind of an activity in the church that we do that simply just helps the church. And that's serving. And that is important, and it should be done. Okay. So I'm not ever taking away from that. However, there's more to it than that. What real discipleship does, and it's not something that necessarily Bible studies are geared towards or that churches are really pushing, is that people need to learn how to share their faith and how to grow other people. You know, if we're truly invested in the kingdom, not only are we giving our money, our tithe to people, or to organizations and to places that are trying to reach others for Christ, but we're also doing it ourselves, and we're called to do that. And it's really the discipleship component that's different than the membership component, is that we are literally investing in the lives of other people, and we're helping them to grow in their faith, and then to teach them to do that with other people. That's real discipleship. It's when I was with Crew, when I was doing that and being trained by those guys when I was in college, they had a model. It's called Win Them to Christ, Build Them Up in the Faith, and then send them out to do the same thing. Win, build, send. And so that's really, that's a good model to think of. Um, Ours is reach, equip, and go. I mean, that's the way we phrase it: reach, equip, and go. And the equipping phase is the discipleship phase, and that's teaching them to go out and do the same thing. So real discipleship will always have that direction of training somebody to get them to go do the same thing. And that does not mean, and here's what I want to make sure that we make this clear. Some people hear that as, okay, now I'm going to go to faraway lands and start doing mission work. That is not what that means at all. Your mission can be right there in your backyard, in your front yard. Your mission can be on your street. Your mission can be 2 blocks away. Your mission can be in your office or the area that you work in. It's going to be, it can be in the area you live in. You don't have to go anywhere. And it's not just, going and inviting somebody to come to church with you. It's really about you reaching out to them. And it's you learning how to do that and talk to them about their faith and have those conversations. And then start to challenge them to grow as once they do receive Christ, and show them how to do that and how to walk in the faith, and then how to teach others to walk in the faith. That's really what this is about. And so I think what happens is we get into the state, and getting back to your question, of a lot of confusion as to just, checking a box, what we call the God box, and practicing what I call churchianity instead of, and some people call it just playing church, instead of actually working to invest in other people's lives and help them grow, and to help them grow in the faith, and then send them out to do the same. And that is what real discipleship is. That is what we're called to do. That's what we were commanded by the Lord to do. And so it always has that component of, and it always has that component, and I'll say it this way, of sending them out when they're done to go do the same thing, to grow more disciples for Jesus. And the key factor in all this is that we're always glorifying God in everything that we do. It's always about to His glory, not to our own. And so as we embark on this journey, I always caution people in this, is that it's going to be messy. When you get involved with other people's lives, expect messy, because just like your life has things and issues and all that, so do theirs. And we have to remember that. And I will tell you, I'll give you an example. I've worked with, there's been people I've worked with. I've had a guy that I've worked with, and again, I don't mention names, but I've worked with them, and they have been hot and cold with discipleship for about 5 or 6 years. And then now they finally really have started to invest in it. But what I've done is I've never walked away from them. And so I've always stayed in contact, and just talking, and just being a mentor when they needed it, and just being a person there to minister to them when they needed it. And then eventually this person really took to it and realized that this is what they needed after going a lot of different paths. And then after they had done that, they took to it, and now they're soaring, and they're really learning what this is all about, and what truly walking with Christ is all about, in being discipled, and then preparing themselves to go disciple. And I'm really proud of this person. They've really stepped it up. So that's just an example, and being involved in that meant a lot of patience and just really trusting God. And the Lord just kept putting in my heart that person's going to come around. Just be patient. Just be patient. And you think, man, 5 years, that's really patient. I said, yeah, but guess what? That's what we're called to do. In the meantime, I'm spreading seeds. That's what I like to say. We like to say it that way. We're spreading seeds other places. I've been working with other people too. And so you don't, just because this person's not coming along right now, you go work with other people. And then eventually that person will come along, and they'll be there, and you just stay there for them and stay with it. And, don't get frustrated. Don't get mad. And, if you feel like, if you're getting frustrated, take that to the Lord. Don't go show that to other people. And that's a part of discipleship. And I use that as an example because I've had that type of thing happen a few times. And we're, we're about growing people. That's what it is. It's growing people. And sometimes they don't want to grow. And so, and that can always be interesting. And if you're listening to this, I've also been a school teacher. And so I work with teenagers, high school. I've been doing that for over 30 years, whether it's been coaching, teaching, or a combo of both. And so I've been in education in some form or fashion for a long time, as well as ministry. And so I can say this, is that working with people is messy, and you have to be patient with them. The guy that discipled me, he used to say this. He goes, "We teach in miles and we grow in inches." And we
Definitely.
got to remember that when we're working
Yeah.
with people. And I just tell people this. I say, look, when you're working with somebody and you're discipling them, just remember sometimes how slow you were to come along too. When you think they're being hard-headed, stubborn, and not listening, guess what? We've all kind of done that. And so it's just you got to remember that you did that too. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so, that it takes time, and it does, and it's messy. And I also tell people, when you start out, don't go out and try to disciple the world. Okay. 3 people is plenty to start with. That's pray for 3. And then as you get better at it, as you learn, as you feel, as you've been emboldened, as you've been discipled yourself, then grow from there. And, I have lots of people I work with now, but there's been times where it's only been 1 or 2. And you know what? At that time, in those seasons, that's all I needed. So I had plenty on my plate, and because it does take time and it's an investment, and that is something the Lord calls us to do. And I know some people have children and they have, families, and they think, oh, I don't have any time for all this. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. Jesus made an interesting point to people about this. If you go to Luke 14, he says this. He says, if you do not hate your mother, your brother, your father, your sister, your spouse, even your own life, you're not worthy to be my disciple. Deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. So I promise you, you have time. You just have to reprioritize your schedule. That may mean a little less TV time. That may mean a little less social media time, that sort of thing. But you can prioritize to disciple. And I would encourage people who are ultra busy with families, once a week. That's it. Just plan a couple hours a week that you're going to dedicate to this, and then and keep your group really small at first until you really learn and understand how to manage it. And you need to be discipled yourself first before you start. Remember this: Paul trained for 3 years. He trained. He didn't just start going out and ministering. And this is Paul we're talking about, the greatest theologian, the greatest apologist, the greatest disciple maker that the world has ever seen, and that Jesus used in ways that no one could have imagined. I mean, we have the gospel, and we the understanding of discipleship because of Paul. I mean, he really is the disciple to the apostle to the Gentiles. And most of us are Gentiles, and we know how far and wide that the gospel spread through Europe, and then once Great Britain became a strong nation, how far it spread the gospel. And we've seen this happen through even through the Holy Roman Church, and we've seen all that. Well, Paul is largely responsible for a lot of that, and it really started with him and how Jesus used him, the way he was called. And of course, Jesus proclaimed that over his life, that he would be the guy. I mean, that didn't mean that Peter and the other disciples didn't do a lot as well, because they did. But Paul, more than anybody, was used in ways that we couldn't imagine. And I say all that to remind you that even Paul trained. So if you've never discipled and never been discipled, don't go out and try to make disciples. You need to learn. And our series can teach you how to do that. We can teach you how to do that. And we're going to be coming out with that. Our original plan was this fall. Right now, we've had to push that back to this winter until the book comes out. The publishing of the book has taken a little longer than we had anticipated. But right now we are asking for people to help us financially support the book. We've already had some money, some gifts come in, and we ourselves have put money down on the book. And then we're going to we're going to continue that process until it's paid off. But we've got TBN is going to be the publishing group. They're going to help us, and they've already did their own support to help us as well. And so I have to tip my cap to those guys for what they've been able to provide for us in getting this book published. But it takes a few months to get that done, and it just took a little longer than we planned. But the book is coming, but also we're going to be launching online courses to teach people. And where our goal is to start a movement. And that movement is that that eventually what we want to do in 2026 is we want to start traveling to places that listen to our podcast and that show a strong interest. And we do know where all of our numbers fall. We have the type of program. I use a type of program that tells us where people are listening from and all that kind of stuff. And so places where we have big, heavy groups, we want to go to those places and start the discipleship movements there. So literally it's me and my wife and 2 dogs and us jumping in the truck and probably maybe toting an RV and going and staying there for a week and getting people started there, and then getting them online on the courses, and working with churches in the area if they so want us to do that, to go in and teach them true discipleship. And so that's what we're aiming to do. That's going to be a part of all this as we get going. Again, we're disciple planting is what we're doing, and we want to help churches get disciples built in their churches to grow their churches and to grow their numbers. I mean, that's a big deal to churches, is growing numbers. I don't really worry about that, but if you start making disciples in churches, you're going to naturally grow your numbers, and that's going to help get more people in front of the gospel, which is really the ultimate goal, and to be able to spread the gospel. And so these people who are being discipled and doing the discipling, we want them to be leading people to Christ. It should not always be your pastor. It should be you. And if you're truly out there being discipled, and then you learn and you get trained and then you go out, you're going to feel confident in sharing your faith, because it's not just about, we can show you the techniques of showing your faith. I can do that in one evening. The thing is, it's not just about the sharing part. It's really all the other pieces that come with it that you really need to have your heart in the right place. So that way you can deal with the issues when they come up, because there's going to be lots of issues. The enemy's going to attack you. I tell people that all the time. The more you do for God and the more you promote him, the more you're going to be attacked. It's a natural consequence that comes with it. It's a test of our faith. But as that happens, if you're prepared, you'll be able to handle it, and you'll know what to do and how to walk through that. And so that's a big part of the training, to be honest with you. That's probably a bigger part is that part than it is actually teaching you how to share your faith. Sharing your faith isn't hard. It's all the other pieces that come with it, and having your heart prepared and having your mindset in the right place to be able to do it. So I think that's just another important concept of discipleship. But back to your original question, the being the member versus actually being discipled. Yeah, there's a big difference, and it's you being completely active. And I've had a lot of people, I'll just say this, had somebody here recently tell me that they've been a Christian for a long time, but they've always felt like something's missing. And they started talking to me, and I was just talking to them about discipleship, and they were praying, and they kind of felt the Lord tell them, this is what's been missing. This is what's missing in so many Christians, is that you're not actively pursuing other people. I will tell you where I got all this. It was being trained with Cru, Campus Crusade for Christ. And if you guys ever, obviously read our books and stuff, but if you ever want to go and just read about somebody who talks a lot about this, read the books by Dr. Bill Bright. I encourage you to do that. I pick them up still, just as a reminder. And I don't necessarily use his stuff in our writings, but it's influenced. There will be an acknowledgement that indirectly, they in our books, that indirectly he has influenced, and Campus Crusade for Christ has influenced, or Cru has influenced the way that I approach life and approach discipleship. So even though there's nothing directly quoted from them, there will be an acknowledgement that some of just the general thinking and framework comes from there. And that's what Campus Crusade for Christ is they are a organization that goes on campuses to disciple other people and to make disciples and to fulfill the Great Commission. And that's really what our calling is in all of this, is fulfilling your Great Commission. That's what we call the Great Harvest. I believe that there's a revival still to happen. I think the groundwork has been laid for that here in the last 2 or 3 years. I think we've seen a lot of events happen, world events that have taken shape. The Charlie Kirk is just one of them, and the situation with him and Turning Point USA. And I think what they've done is they've paved a way for an incredible revival, unlike anything we've ever seen. And we're starting to see that unfold. So we believe the time is now for us to step forward and start doing what we're called to do. And it just seems like the Lord just starting to make this train move in ways that I never envisioned. And so that hopefully that gives you a good picture of what this is all about.
Indeed, Mr. TS. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101, Review Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So finally, if you could leave our audience of viewers with one simple, actionable first step to move from a passive faith to an active life of discipleship, what would it be, Mr. TS?
Great question. And I would tell them, you know what? You can get started by getting into our online courses when we start offering them this winter. That would be the first step because we can help you from there. We can teach you discipleship, what it looks like, and we can do it in 40 lessons. You're also going to be hearing about this movement called The Gospel Is, which is going to be our prelude to discipleship, where I was talking about going to other locations and helping them start and get their feet going. So you'll hear this stuff coming out. It's going to be coming out here this winter. And so that's why I'm starting to advertise that now, because I do know it usually takes a couple of months for it to really sink in. And that would be the perfect place to start. And if you just want a general book to read, you know what? Go grab one of Dr. Bill Bright's books right now. If you just want a book to read right now, grab one of his. He's got a lot of good stuff. Dr. Bill Bright, the founder of Campus Crusade for Christ.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, Mr. Tias. And can you please invite our listeners to support all your projects, your advocacy, or whatever want to promote on Abstract Outside?
You bet. Go to thegodcenterconcept.com. If you want to be a sponsor, go to thegodcenterconcept.net, as we have a flyer there for sponsors. And you know what? You can listen to our podcast. We have two of them, the Kingdom Crossroads podcast, and that is on all the major podcast hosts of Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music. It's on Audible, all the good stuff. We do some downloads on YouTube. And you got also the God Center Concept podcast. So we've got all of that available for you. We have our TV show on the Now Network. It airs at 4:30 p.m. Eastern on Sundays.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. TS Wright, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Mr. TS, thank you so much for your time.
You bet. Thank you for having me, and I really enjoy being on your show and look forward to more fun, fruitful discussions in the future.
Yes, indeed. What up, people? See you soon.